All right, mic check. How are we today? Everyone feeling good? Not too sleepy after lunchtime? Today, I want to talk about the tension of being a leader in modern technology teams. What we need from our leaders and what we need to do as a leader. The decision models and the tools we're going to use and how to match them appropriately to your teams. And more importantly, that being a leader isn't a grab bag of tips and tricks, but it can be a coordinated strategy, a chain link system where the sum of the parts, where together they're more powerful than the sum of all their parts. These tools will be social constructs that will augment other accelerators like AI-assisted coding or platform thinking. Now, today I won't be talking about leadership concepts like around relationships, like building trust or managing conflict. I will be talking today about competencies, performance, and alignment. I'll be exposing a set of tools to provide leaders at all levels the ability to set direction, show the way with maps, and make it easy to get there with paved roads. My name's Lee Campbell, and for 25 years ago, I built websites. We call that product now. Then for 15 years, I was a contractor consultant where I learned about building high-quality software and new technologies. For the last 5 years, however, I've returned to working in product teams, growing a strong delivery software practice for a startup that's now a multi-billion-dollar unicorn. And as I've returned to product, that's who this session is for. People who build enduring products, people who build software that's intended to last over 2 years. Now, Suzanne's talk yesterday showed that predictability and adaptability are keys to long-term survival, but that's challenging. And so we've got a map here today of where we're going to go. We're going to move from leadership challenges through to a coordinated strategy. We'll look at the challenges we might face in forming teams, then look at working in a team, and then the challenges of an organization of teams. So, part one, leadership challenges. We can all be leaders, and I'm not talking about management today, though some of my experiences have come from having the responsibilities of being a manager. Leadership is an emergent property. When I moved back to product after all those years consulting, I found quite different challenges. Everyone working on the same thing for the same reason seemed to be the exception, not the rule. Everyone worked in different ways, which added unpredictability and sometimes unnecessary overhead. And there were wide variations in skills, not just across roles, but within the same role. I would see discrepancies in knowledge on how the web worked, on how to utilize the cloud, and how to manage data. And no one's a villain in their own story. People are doing what they think is right. And we wanted to move the authority to the information with intent-based leadership, but control without competency is chaos. And those levels of chaos were not fun nor sustainable. We want to be good at our job, we want to make a difference, and we want to be valued. And if we're building products that need to endure, we also want the teams that build those products to endure as well. So, as a leader in technology, I find myself concerned with three main things, and they're not cloud, AI, and microservices. They are people, delivery, and operations. And why are they these three things? Well, people. If the people I have can't do the job, or I don't have enough of them, I'm going to have challenges. Delivery. If I do have enough people and they can do the job, but we deliver the wrong thing, I'm going to have challenges. And operations. If I have enough people and they're good enough at their job and they deliver the right thing, but then it fails to continue to deliver value to the business, then I have challenges. So as you can see that, well, people are at the core of each of these challenges. When I talk to people about challenges they have with their leaders, what comes back is that people have trust issues. People don't feel valued, or they lack alignment with their leaders. For example, I associate being trusted with building the right thing and building it well. Feeling valued with building the right thing at the right time and being aligned with the right people, being in the right place. Now this may sound a bit Patrick Lencioni, and The 5 Dysfunctions is a great book, but it's a generalized book, and I want to provide more specific guidance to technology leaders with concrete actions that they can take away from. And I'd like to turn this around and look at it more from a leader's point of view. Daniel Pink's book, Drive, shows us that autonomy, mastery, and purpose are keys to motivations. Well, we've taken these ideas and matched them up with our team's needs. So while as a team member, I want to be trusted, valued, and aligned, as a leader, to do this, I need confidence in my team's competence, the ability to perform in the moment, and I agree that alignment continues to be a challenge on both sides of the fence. And this is what we'll be focusing on today: competency, performance, and alignment. The first of our 3 challenging environments is forming teams, and I'm going to characterize that with a startup. So when we think of an actual startup, I think it can be quite dramatic. Will it work? Will we find market fit? Will we get paid? It's all quite dramatic and exciting. And forming new teams and companies can also be rather dramatic. Now, the drama of having a new team doesn't need to be a reason for chaos. Quality startups still have structure and principles. Things that I've seen regularly is that they hire good people and get out their way. There's no need for red tape and bureaucracy. We also want to optimize for adaptability so that we can move quickly and find market fit, and we source those reasons for adaptation through validated learning. What tends to be missing is any sort of guidance, which can multiply the existing sources of unpredictability by increasing variation in the technology solutions and processes. But this is a very hard balancing act. We value our team and we value giving them autonomy, and we want to be able to move fast. There's also a cultural glue where we're all in this together. So if the server goes down, we all come back and help to fix it. If we're missing a delivery, we'll all chip in. But this is where tensions start growing and many people miss it. So we have tensions between moving fast and being reckless, between autonomy with our team and divergent execution, or being a cohesive and supportive team versus mobbing on everything, which leaves the team in an elevated state of anxiety, which leads to burnout and poor decision making. So those of you that aren't at a startup may also recognize some of this too. I want to provide a metaphor for today for this theme, the theme of this presentation, and that's one of climbing a mountain. If we have a team that wants to go mountain climbing and we want to make it successful, we should at least agree on which mountain we're climbing. We should point to the top of a specific mountain and provide direction. If we want to improve our chances of success, then we should give the team a map. That map might show areas of dense foliage, raging rivers, and icy mountain passes. If we really want to improve our chances to succeed, then let's give them cleared paths. Ideally, cleared passages through that foliage, bridges over those rivers, and paved roads up the mountain. And with these 3 themes, direction, maps, and paths, we're going to go find some help. One of the first steps in getting alignment is to provide that direction. Just like our mountaineers here, who have many peaks they could aim for, they're all pointing at the same one. And you too can provide leadership with a unifying direction for your team. And an easy way to do this in technology is to provide a reference implementation. Sid from DevOps Directive posted this tweet as a quality example of a reference implementation. Sid shows a valid Docker file for a Node.js application. Now, if you don't know Node or Docker, that's okay, just follow along for a moment. So, let's look at this simple Docker file. My guess is there are 2 reactions in the crowd. One of the reactions will be, yep, this seems legit. And the other reaction will be filled with anxiety and judgment. Let's walk through some improvements, see what we can do to this file, and what the takeaways are for both reactions in the audience. The first thing that Sid does, he drives us to do, is to pin the base image to at least a minor version, and that's going to protect us from upstream breaking changes. He also chooses a small base image, which is going to speed up builds and transfers and reduce our attack surface area. Sid then suggests that we use a dedicated working directory instead of root. This is just good hygiene. He copies the package.json and the package.lock.json file separately from the source code. This stops every code change from invalidating the cache. Next, he ensures he isn't running his root. He ensures production builds are production builds. He provides some self-describing metadata with the expose keyword, some caching for performance, and then finally a multi-stage build to separate dev from production. Now, is that code perfect? Maybe not. Should you adopt it as a reference example? I have no idea. I don't know what your team values. However, I do think it's a good example of a reference implementation, a way to show people what good looks like. It shows what not to do and a better way. It is concrete, so the team can discuss, challenge, and improve on it. So what's the takeaway here? If you use Docker files and anything there was new to you, you probably lack the guidance on what good looks like. If, however, you are seething away in your seat, seeing common mistakes that you see at your company all the time, perhaps you haven't provided an example of what good looks like. This is your opportunity to be a leader. This is how we can see leadership as an emergent property of high-functioning teams. Reference examples help to get consistency in implementation while making your team feel supported. This is where you can lead by example. Now, having a team produce consistent quality software, potentially through reference examples, reduces variability for me as an engineer in an engineering team. However, for planning, I also need consistency and timeliness. For example, if part of my team can deliver a feature in, say, 2 days, but the other part of the team takes 3 weeks to do it, that makes it very hard to plan. And you can imagine the social challenges that emerge from that kind of tension. While we have clarity on the quality we're expecting, we also need to set expectations of the time it takes to perform the task. How well you perform in the moment is what I'm referring to as performance. You may have the competency to get to the end result, but I need you to get to that end result in a consistent time frame. In my teams, they know that my performance expectations are, if they're to build a web API, it is 1 day. 1 day to build a Hello World web API, that's CI/CD, IAC, provisioned, up into production, with observability included, connected to a data store. Now, this isn't to show off how fast 1 or 2 people in my team are. This is to show off how consistent and predictable all of my team is. This is huge for our ability to plan and deliver successfully. But we're not paid to ship Hello World, and often I see an over-bias towards shipping things like IAC and Ollie. So who here sometimes sees when they're working on a project key deliverables like deploy a Kubernetes cluster or update a web API? I have, and sure, that's the work that needs to be done, but they're not outcomes. They are technical implementations. And I think that this is something that I refer to as solution in the outcome. And I think we end up with solutions, not outcomes, because of the way we estimate work. So strap in, this is going to be somewhat contentious. Who does estimations at work? We've got a few people here. Does everyone know of the implementation details of the solution they're estimating when they're estimating? And is it the same detail as the other people that are estimating? How is it that the person that designed this thing isn't involved in the estimating? Or how come time wasn't a factor of the design when they were designing it? Who has been in an estimation session where your estimate is wrong? Can it please be lower? So this becomes very confusing. Is this a negotiation? And if it is a negotiation, can we negotiate on quality, scope, budget? But this is where most engineers get reprimanded for being disruptive. Now, the funny thing is here, we have shadow industries that track velocity so we can jam predictability back into the system. Let's play out an example. My sales team need to know about a credit limit breach in the back office. They need to know quickly so they can reduce the number of accounts being closed by the back office. Someone identifies that the ideal solution would be to integrate the sales platform to the back office credit system. The team get together to provide an estimate for integrating the cloud-based Kubernetes stack with the mainframe in the data center. The conversation kicks up a gear by discussing securing the PII data, retry semantics, and synchronizing integrated comments tracking. There's probably a few people in here that are already thinking of solutions. Instead of focusing on business outcomes, we are now spending our time focusing on technical implementations, and we're probably going to be estimating on that. When we got the head of risk and head of sales in a room together, we distilled that the business outcome was to reduce the number of account closures due to incomplete verification. So we're moving to business outcomes. We use the language that our stakeholders use, and then we can place our bets. And our bet was that if salespeople just knew that accounts were under credit check, they would be highly motivated to support their customers to complete the credit checks. The sales team were trained in this. They knew how to do this, and they're also motivated. They don't want accounts to be closed. This was a notification problem. They just didn't know in a timely manner to do this. Both the risk and sales team were completely happy if we just sent a message over email, Slack, SMS, that said account 123 is under credit check. No PII data, no Kubernetes cluster, no comment tracking. We've now moved our focus away from what engineers are not great at, in my opinion, estimation and conflict, and move them to what they are really good at, solving problems, getting the right people to do the right things. We can set direction for our teammates by showing them what good looks like with a reference example. This clarifies the competency level we're looking for. We clarify performance expectations with timeliness expectations. And we gain alignment by becoming outcome focused. All right, time to change gears a little bit. I know it's just after lunchtime, so who here knows what a golf clap is? And can I get a golf clap from those who know what a golf clap is? Thank you. So for all the other people, can you please join us and join in for another round of golf clap, please? Well done, thank you. Can I now ask that we do that twice as loud? I'm going to ask to go twice as loud again. And one more time. Can I go twice as loud again? So just an example of leadership without management or authority, and also just to wake us up a bit. All right, let's move on from forming teams to working in teams. The direction we've given is useful for people, but with direction we're still left without maps. Who does what and when? Where am I allowed to innovate without conflict or disappointment? If my role isn't expected to have this responsibility yet, how do I move into a role that does have that responsibility? How do I get promoted? This kind of uncertainty can lead to conflict and trust issues. Being unclear on what a system should do and to what quality is another source of conflict. I've heard the term scrappy, not crappy, but where is the line drawn? Because surely someone's scrappy is another person's crappy. And on that spectrum, surely someone else's scrappy is another person's gold-plated. So let's get some clarity. Let's level up from directions to maps and measures. The maps I believe we can provide are as simple as getting clarity on our roles and responsibilities, our quality of service, and upgrading from outcome-focused to measurable outcomes. When we don't know who is accountable for a missed deadline, or who maintains a system, or how we get promoted, people feel under-supported. And sometimes we can see that fight, flight, freeze response in unsupported people where they either fight the system and innovate wildly and unpredictably, they can freeze, retreat into their shell to avoid attention, or flight. They can just pack up and leave. The support I want to give people are decision models. They're maps so that they can find their way. And first we can provide people with maps about their roles, the things they do. We define a skill set for each role and the expected competency that they can demonstrate. We also set the organisational scope for which they show that competency. For example, you might have a project planning skill, but some people do it for a team of 3 for a 2-week project. Another person might do project planning for 5 teams for the whole quarter. Same skill, different scope. So for a quick basic example, here's a simple matrix. We're going to do 3 roles across the top and 4 competency areas down the side. We fill it in, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of example rows. And these are just examples. The real ones would be more detailed. Here we can see that a junior is expected to demonstrate knowledge of the business goals by identifying them. A senior, however, is expected to create plans that align to the business goals. And a principal in this made-up hierarchy is expected to ensure that multiple teams' plans are aligned and that those plans are aligned to business goals. Lower down, we can see scope and competencies for SLOs. These samples show both competency and the scope of that competency. Now, I actually want to pull away focus from those examples because they're just examples and they're a distraction. They won't slot into your company structure, but this trick is useful for other types of roles like QA or product, not just people that write code. So for a quick start, if you want to do this for your company, you create a blank grid that has the role titles across the top and these 4 super categories of plan it, build it, ship it, and run it. Alternatively, you can look to CMM or Sophia, S-F-I-A, but I found them rather overwhelming. Instead, I recommend searching for Circle CI Competency Matrix. It's an excellent set of resources that show you how to build your own competency matrix, and they also provide a Creative Commons version of their own matrix. If you can align your company's job descriptions to your competency matrix, you have very strong building blocks for a career development map. Something that people can use on their own, in their own time, to find their own way. But being a lead in technology, I'm not just concerned about people, I'm also concerned about systems. These systems can be a source of anxiety and confusion for my people. They come to conferences, maybe like this one, where we talk about reactive programming and data mesh and chaos engineering, but they don't know how, when, and where to apply it. Let's jump back to our reference example. We provided a reference example on how to get from something like that to something that was deterministic, secure, and fast. But I think there are 2 steps we should do before we even provide what good looks like. First, I think we need to explicitly define our technology choices. And second, I think we should limit those choices. If you have lots of technologies, then providing a reference example for each of them, or ideally combinations of them, just becomes impractical. My previous YOW talk showed how excessive dependencies are a contributing factor to increased sources of variability, which reduces predictability. So, the Docker file isn't the point. The point is, do you have clarity on standards for your Docker files or your HTTP servers and web APIs? SQL? IAC? But this can be a lot to cover, so how do I start? Where do I start? Well, just like we had a map for what I do, my competency matrix, I need a map for what my system should do. Sales teams have been using a tool to incrementally and iteratively improve their processes, and I'm seeing it emerge in technology spaces as well. It's called a maturity model. Effectively, you define the key areas that you make up the system that you're building, and then you identify stepping stones you need to get from the current ad hoc manner of your system up a set of maturity levels from ad hoc to consistent to systematized and up to strategic enablers. The specific way I use these is to ensure my team's focus is only on level 1 first. A team will work on completing level 1, and when they complete level 1, they will help their groups around them, their teams nearby, also complete level 1. Once we've all completed level 1, we then move on to tackling level 2. So, providing this to our team was such a relief to them. It gave them permission to work on vulnerability management, distributed tracing, and tagging infrastructure without the guilt that they weren't working on auto-scaling or policy as code, or the more ambiguous yet adventurous things like data mesh and chaos engineering. It also prevented people from over-optimizing in some areas while abandoning other areas, security. In previous section, we moved from focusing on solutions to focusing on outcomes. Now I'm looking to upgrade that thinking from to focusing on measurable outcomes. The issue that we left that last section was that we knew the shape of the outcome, but we didn't know the size of it. It was hard to know if we're aiming too big or too small. For example, we were looking at reducing the number of account closures due to failed credit checks. Now, if we save just one account from closure, are we heroes? Or if we don't save all of them from closure, are we considered failures? We don't know. So let's add a measure here and specify that it should come down from the rate of 10 per month down to 2 per month. Now, we can do this for the other business metrics, but we could also do that with our bets. Now, our bets might be wrong, but they should be clear enough that the team can either challenge or support them. The great thing about measurable outcomes is if your feedback loop is fast enough, you can naturally finish projects ahead of time. If you meet your measurable outcome, then you have the option to move on to the next project. And we trust our product team to make that call. Well done. We've now matured from just giving direction to giving maps on how to get to where we want to be. People on the team are confident not only in their roles and responsibilities, but have a clear and credible map for the journey in their career path. They have clarity on what's expected of the systems they are building and what they need to support now and next. And they have clear measurable outcomes that align to business goals. And this is a great place for many people to be, but some of us want more. Part 3. This is for people who are either in big companies or aspiring to one day become a big company. Let's look at organizational challenges. And those who are working in bigger companies may be familiar with the challenges where big projects just never get prioritized. They're too big, or there's no time for weeding that is tending to software entropy, things like security vulnerabilities, and there's no time for feeding to ensure that we grow and improve. And without the weeding and feeding, it becomes very hard to meet our performance expectations. Ineffective feedback loops with upper management or a disconnection between their goals and our tasks can lead to these challenges. And then we heard the term strategy getting bandied around by the ExCo. But strategic failure. Big companies with huge missions like digital transformation and cloud migration, and we see them fail all the time. I see 3 types of strategic alignment pieces. I see KPIs, OKRs, and the ROCKS methodology. Neither are problematic in theory, but in practice, these simple ideas are often misused and abused. Simple and easy are not the same thing. Then we go and compound the issue. Firstly, I see that we make the solution the outcome. Now, we've already talked about technicians doing solution in the outcome, but executives are people too. They make the same mistakes as us. And move to the cloud is not a business outcome. It doesn't tell us why we're doing it or how we would know when to stop. Secondly, we see a disconnect between the work we're doing and the goal that it's attached to. So, for example, in the spirit of reducing cost per install, we might adopt material design. Now, material design might be seen as an improvement to UX, and UX might be seen as improving the conversion, but that link isn't clear here. Less clear is why we would upgrade the database to move to the cloud. Thirdly, and where it gets really challenging, is where people are putting the effort into thinking of measurable outcomes and in the language that the business use. So they're trying to use words like CPA and ROAS and EBITDA, NPS, churn, retention. But the frustrating thing is, these are not knobs that you can turn. I can't change cost per install. I could spend less and hope that that brings my cost per install down, but I'm also probably going to get less installs. So the thing I can affect is advertising spend, but I cannot directly affect cost per install. So how do we close the alignment gap here between unmeasurable goals, solutions in the outcome, and work that lacks connection to a larger goal? Something that's given me a lot of clarity is a concept called value driver trees. A driver tree helps me to understand how do I get from the thing that the business cares about and measures to the things that I can affect. In this example, we have a business metric that I'm calling new users. I figured out that the business also tracked 2 other metrics that feed up into it, and that is click to registration rate, or click to reg, and impressions. Now, if impressions go up and click to reg stays the same, we get more new users. However, if impressions stay the same and click to reg ratio improves, we get more new users. I already feel like I understand the marketing process better. However, I can't actually affect those metrics either, so I drill down further. I've noticed that the click-to-reg rate is directly affected by the click-to-land rate and the time it takes to register. I've also noticed that impressions are dictated by how much we spend and on how many channels we have access to spend on. Now, my department can't do much around the registration flow or the channels to drive impressions, so I look how I can manipulate click-to-land. And this is exciting for me. I found a great proxy for web performance called Web Vitals. Web Vitals breaks down into 3 things I can control, and that is page load time, semantic content, and secure web practices. I've finally found the levers I can pull and the knobs that I can turn. While driver trees were a revelation to me for personal use, I actually found that over time they were brilliant as a communication and alignment tool too. So how do I use driver trees? First, I find the levers that I can manipulate directly, and then I go and make my bets on which one I think is going to be most effective. However, where it gets really effective is I can talk the same language as both the business and as other teams. Now, remember when I said I can't affect time to register? Well, my mates in the other team can. And so if they're looking to improve click-to-registration rate, we can make sure that we're aligning on the same thing. Now, if we're trying to improve it and they're blocking us, or the other way around, we're blocking them, we can go to the business and get clarity on the business priority. Hey, are new users still the current priority? We can also finally make a connection between our work and the corporate objective, something that I find OKRs, KPIs and ROCs in practice fall short on. One of the complaints in the enterprise that I hear is that people feel like there isn't space to innovate. One of the complaints I hear from leaders and management in enterprises is the surprising places that people will try to innovate. Driver trees give people a clear place in which they can innovate. Hey, software developers, I want page load times to improve. Give me some ideas on that. So predictability, quality and speed are important, but people also want the space to grow. Can we have both? Because common thinking is if people are learning, they're not doing. Well, based on the data that suggests that the cost of staff rotation is about 1/3 of their salary, and we know how disruptive it is to teams and projects to rotate people, surely there's value in making people feel supported. And in my opinion, one of the best ways of making people feel supported is through a structured learning and development program. We provide people with direction through reference examples and maps with a competency matrix. The finishing touch here is to provide a learning and development pathway. A pathway to guide people on a paved road of self-directed learning, learning by sharing and teaching with situational leadership, learn by doing through coding challenges and performing in the role, and validated learning through certification. And this isn't easy. It can be simple, but simple and easy aren't the same thing. Where you can, I recommend using existing tools, ideally in the public space, maybe low-cost online learning, and books. Certification can be divisive. It needs to be one of the tools on the tool belt, not the only tool. It's great for personal morale and also ensuring consistent language. For example, if your team uses AWS, it's very handy when everyone knows the difference between CloudFront, CloudFormation, and CloudWatch. Dedicating time to learning and development program is the last piece of the competency puzzle. But remember back to when I found that if everyone had the same, provided the same quality of work, but at different speeds, we couldn't plan. We've both provided a map for the performance expectations on a competency matrix and a maturity model for the systems, but they both fit into the metaphor of a map. We need to give people a path to meeting those performance expectations. We need to ensure that we can perform our skill in time constraints and often under time pressure. This is how we get to higher levels of consistency and predictability. Let's take some learnings from some other industries. And when I think of occupations that deal with pressure, A few come to mind for me, and that is surgeons, fighter pilots, and elite sports people. When a surgeon goes to operate, do you think that that is something that they've been trained for, that they've practiced? When a fighter pilot has a dogfight in the sky in a time of war, do you think that's the first time they find out if they're any good? What about a sports person who's taking a shot at goal during a game? Do you think that's the only time that they take shots on goal during games? These are high-pressure situations. The operating theatre, a dogfight, a sporting event, are what I refer to as performance moments, a term I've taken from Kerry Evans, the master performance coach. In software delivery, we also have performance moments, but unlike our more established industries, we seem to forget to practice these performance moments. Now think of how many times these industries must practice. Now I want you to think about the last time you are under time pressure to do something well. Maybe it was planning a project, dealing with an outage or an incident, maybe hitting a deadline. Now I want you to think about how many times you applied deliberate, dedicated time and energy to practicing that skill. We tend to rely on hope, maybe even passive-aggressive micro-behaviours. I sure know I've been guilty of this. Now, it isn't as simple as saying, practice more. First, we need to identify our performance moments, and not everything is a performance moment. I would pick 1, maybe 2 moments to practice initially. Next, we need to agree on what good looks like, and remember, the higher the standard, the higher the support leaders need to provide. For example, one company believed that incident response was an important performance moment that warranted practice. They agreed the terms of engagement, which was how incidents would be managed and which incidents would be practiced. They came up with a game. It consisted of 5-minute rounds, a dungeon master and 2 players, which were a first responder and an escalation point. The players were given a random set of playing cards that they could play during the incident. They used real incident response tools like PagerDuty, Blameless, or even Slack, but didn't touch any real code, didn't touch any real production systems. The teams were able to practice high-pressure situations without any consequence. The Dungeon Master had a saying that the point of practice wasn't to get better, it was to want to get better. And with this in mind, practicing was fun. It was inclusive, it was safe, so therefore it was repeated. And when it was repeated, these moments became opportunities to shine, not moments to dread. Other performance moments that might be worth practicing include project planning and risk mitigation. So we've taken the metaphor of direction and maps and extended it to paved roads. We have clarity on how to meet our competency expectations with a formal learning and development program, and we've identified our performance moments and have dedicated time for deliberate practice of these performance moments. Finally, we've connected the gap between what we do and why we do it with driver trees. Just pointing to the top of a mountain and saying that's where we're going is great for understanding the mission. It provides direction. To improve your chances of success, then provide a map. To really improve those chances of success, provide well-traveled paths or even better, paved roads. A coordinated strategy is not just ensuring your teams are aligned, but it's been armed with that chain link system where each link in the chain provides you more depth, more breadth, to providing people a sense of purpose, a space to grow into, master their craft, and permission to be autonomous. At the start of the session, we talked about the need for people to feel trusted, valued, and aligned, reducing unnecessary conflict. Leaders were looking for competency, performance, and alignment so that they could have predictability. There is no need to see these as opposite ends of a spectrum, merely constraints to a larger challenge. And by providing teams with direction, a map on possible ways on how to get there, and paved roads, it makes it easy for them to get there. We solve both challenges. Everyone can be an effective leader. Team members can be effective and grow in their role with clarity and support. But leaders can have a team that they trust to deliver and to grow, caring for one another along the way. I hope this isn't hard to see what this can do for team morale, delivery performance, and operational performance. My hope is that people watching this, that the takeaway is that this is the new bar. This is what you should expect from your company. We're all leaders, we're all part of a team, and being part of a team, in my opinion, means contributing to that team. Not just sustaining it, but growing it. While you should demand this from your company, I think it's fair that your team and your company can also demand this from you. Thank you. That was Layers of Leadership. Thank you, leaders, and I've been Lee Campbell.